All right, I believe I'm live, which is good, I guess. All right. Not sure if y'all can hear me. I probably sound like I'm far away. Um, all right. If you've been following me on Twitter, I have been following a little bit of what's been going on with this shooter, and I read his manifesto. I read what 73 pages, although to be fair, most of it is he just wastes space. Most of it is just wasted space, although he is also a waste of space. What concerns me, besides the fact that he murdered people, innocents, besides that, um, which in itself obviously is a horrible thing, but it's not just that. He deliberately chose a method of killing that was going to have consequences, that was going to affect those around him. And actually, not just where he is, but he wanted to affect the United States. Now, this guy is supposedly from Australia. Now, I don't know the details that I didn't learn from 9 o'clock Saturday morning. Um, and I think someone said something like there are two other people involved with this. There probably was. I don't know how someone could pull this kind of thing off on their own. Even the Las Vegas shooter, same thing. I don't know if anyone can pull something like that on their own. Um, but the guy was trying to screw stuff up in the United States. This asshat, this this cum rag, this dung maggot, right? This piece of waste of space, well, piece of filth, right? Let's find any other synonym. I want to dehumanize him. I suppose I shouldn't do that. I suppose that that's just as bad as what he's been doing. But the reality is, he is a racist, and racism is intolerable in any form. It doesn't matter if it's black against white, white against black, white against any brown, which is where he stood. The guy was supposedly an eco-nationalist. He's really an ethno-nationalist with an ecological motivation. Supposedly, if you believe if you believe anything about his manifesto, then you believe that the guy actually believed that white people are dying out way too fast, brown people are overpopulating, and that they're going to displace white people, right? That's what he believed, and that's very dangerous. How do maybe I should put a disclaimer. Can I put a disclaimer? Not sure if I can. What does this button do? Oh. Okay, sorry, I'm being distracted. Apparently, I can stream in different filters. Didn't realize I could do that. Sorry. What I want to find is something that lets me alter the message, lets people know I'm not condoning what this guy is doing. But I don't see it. All right. Makes it bright. Anyway, so the guy believes that white people are dying off, and he wanted to preserve the white people. But not only did he want to do that, he wanted to eradicate the brown people everywhere. Apparently, he's gone all over Europe and witnessed brown people, what he feels is colonizing Europe and moving out the locals. And he insists that we need to take our countries back. And I don't think he appreciates the irony of saying this. A man from Australia living in New Zealand, failing to appreciate that Australians, regardless of the fact that Australians were sent to Australia for penal colonies, right? To be punished or to basically sent out to die. They're still more or less there also to colonize an unconquerable continent and to conquer the natives as well. And that's what they did. So the indigenous peoples got pushed out. Um, the Irish and the English who were sent there and apparently thrived. And those that didn't die off are the 1% that Lysol didn't kill, right? The 0.1%. So they're hardy fellows, but there's a sense of entitlement, like this is our land now. And to a degree, I kind of understand that because even in the US, it's like, well, we made this country, it's ours now. We don't want to give it away. That's kind of fair, but to the degree that he wants to eradicate indigenous peoples, that's bullshit. To the degree that he wants to eradicate anyone that comes in, is bullshit. Sorry, not gonna work. Now, I don't believe in being colonized. So if there was an actual invading force, sure, stop them, absolutely. But when they're being invited in, I'm sorry, that's not. You can't exactly look at it like an invasion the way he has. The guy views it as he views it from the lens of crusader, supposedly, if you believe what he says. And basically, he's being invaded by these Muslim barbarians. Right, he still thinks he's in the Crusades, and of course, he asked for the blessing of Breivik in Sweden, apparently, to do this. Which makes you wonder, how did he get in contact with this asshole, or if it's actually real? A lot of what he says, a lot of what's in the manifesto, you actually have to take with a grain of salt. I say that because if you actually read the manifesto, or read what other people had read and their interpretation of it, you'll recognize that there are inconsistencies in there. And he seems to be deliberately trolling. And I say that because, for example, he condemns the West for celebrating going hyper individualistic. And he seems envious of those people that have come in who aren't so individualistic but more collectivistic and somehow maintain their traditions and survived and preserved their culture, whereas the West, having succumbed to capitalism, has lost its culture, lost its identity, all because of our individuality. And sorry, but I'm going to disagree with him on that. I'm also going to disagree with even the principle of opposing individuality, because that's what makes us such a marvelous people. The Western civilization is beautiful because of our individuality, and yet he's decrying this. Now, if people are coming into these countries, that's because they also want individuality, at least in theory. They want the freedoms that we enjoy. And if they're coming in here legally, absolutely, we want to make sure that they adopt our culture, they adopt our individuality, and pass that on and promote our laws that preserve this, right? He doesn't care about that, any of that. He wants to just completely eradicate them because he's afraid of being outnumbered. Even, this is the interesting thing, he talked about how it sucks to be a minority. It's really interesting. He basically said that if you're in the minority, you're oppressed. Fascinating shit. In fact, a lot of what he says echoes a lot of what we hear from the leftists. So let me actually go through some of this. I had actually, as I was reading this stuff, I had tweeted quite a bit about it, about my opinions on it. Let me see if I can find that one. Excuse me. Let me go to one of the latest tweets regarding this. Yeah, so he's praised communism, denounced capitalism, recognizes overpopulation and climate change as real crises, which he indicates among key motivators. He even denounces conservatism for failing to conserve anything. Yep. And to find that. Hold on. Yeah, if I took screen captures, which I believe someone said that the website that I got this from was taken down. Who knows? I don't know if it's true. I haven't checked the link again. He writes, by the way he writes is it's like an ISIS handbook, just so you know. He talks about things like the true question is how did this happen? What can we do to stop it? The only people that seemingly do not face such issues are those with strong traditions, gender norms, societal norms, the poor and the religious, usually a combination of all. This should be an indication of what may truly be at heart of the issue. What can we do to fix it? The issue is complicated, far more complicated and difficult to fix than the issue of ethnic replacement. Likely a new society will need to be created with a much greater focus on family, values, gender, and social norms, and the value and importance of nature, culture, and race. Which basically means he's envious of those cultures that have not adopted our more liberal leanings. So in this way, he's actually very conservative by many definitions. But at the same time, he opposes the conservatism that comes from the particular brand of being brown or of the faith of Muslim or Islam. Oh yeah, there we go. Here's this one about being a minority. It is never wise to become a minority group. In every country, on every continent, those that are in the minority are oppressed. If you become a social, political, or ethnic minority, it will always lead to your oppression. So, again, this sounds like something that came out of leftist dogma. It sounds like something that Ocasio-Cortez might say, or Ilhan Omar, or take your pick of any politician that's getting a lot of attention right now who's in the minority talking about intersectionalism. He says whether they are a political minority and therefore lose the control of the majority of power and thus lose control of the laws and regulations that the public define or that define public life, for those that are the cultural minority find that art in all its forms is created and controlled by a different audience, from a different people, from a different history, with differing ideals and experiences, and therefore they find themselves isolated, excluded, and removed from the creation of contemporary culture. Those that find themselves born linguistically in the minority suffer daily as the conversations of life exclude them. The mass media isolates them, the businesses turn them away, as does the society's speech itself. Finally, there are those that find themselves in the ethnic or racial minority and find their very own genes being bred out of existence through miscegenation and differing racial births. The same people will find themselves gradually less and less represented both politically and culturally, becoming essentially foreigners in their own lands. I feel like this guy is a beta male who's upset that he's not alpha enough to pass on his own genetics, and he's concerned that he's going to be outnumbered. If he's really so concerned, he needs to have his own kids and encourage others who have good genes to do the same. But he's not going to do that. Of course, he hasn't. He's not going to do that. He's not going to do that in jail, certainly. I believe he's been apprehended and has been to a hearing or something like that. But he ended up saying, minorities are never treated well, do not become one. It's amusing and also sick, but amusing that he's saying these things. If he's saying these things. Again, I don't know who authored any of this. And in fact, I highly suspect that he didn't author this, but maybe this is a sort of hodgepodge or cutting and pasting from others. Ooh, batteries though. Let me see if I can charge. It's draining my battery a lot. Okay. And that buzzing sound is my phone. Charging. Okay. He attacks memes. He basically talks about weaponizing memes for perpetuating racist, fascist culture. Basically throwing memeing under the bus. So anyone that has an ironic fascist meme, that's probably going to be flagged for hate speech at this point. I mean, we've already been going in that direction, and this asshole is just, he's expediting the whole situation. Everything wrong. Everything, all the laws that we're afraid of going on right now regarding internet freedoms, he is making it so much worse. And I think he's doing it on purpose. He's a goddamn bull in a china shop, and he knows he's gonna fuck shit up. Hold on. So, oh yeah, this is where he screwed over Candace. He says, oh wait, hold on. This is not the first one. Oh, I need to find the other one. Oh well, hold on. I'm sure I'll get to it. But let's go back to it anyway. So diversity is weak. He says, why is diversity said to be our greatest strength? Does anyone even ask why? It is spoken like a mantra and repeated ad infinitum. Was this the right one? Nope, wrong one. Sorry. That was him talking about diversity. Anyway. Truth that they are left alone in an individual in a society worshipping the cult of the individuals who respond against an influx of outsiders from all corners of the world. Enemies bound by faith, culture, or tradition with higher levels of fertility, trust, and in group preference, resulting in much stronger communities. The truth that they're expected not to combat these myriad, unending, and dedicated interlopers, but to embrace them, accept their own disenfranchisement, accept the loss of their fatherlands, their impoverishment, their own replacements. But yeah, so he's castigating these people who promote the cult of the individual. Well, do you know what? There's nothing wrong with the cult of the individual. You can call me a Satanist, you can call me an individualist or whatever, but the fact is, I wholly embrace this, and I think that this is what makes America strong, because we recognize the individual as the most important unit of society, and that it is from the individual freedom that others have freedoms. By securing your own freedom, you secure others. Maybe I can find that one. Nope, I don't see it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So where I screwed over Candace, he said, is there a particular person that radicalized you the most? Yes, the person that influenced me above all was Candace Owens. Each time she spoke, I was stunned by her insights and her own views, helps push me further and further into the belief of violence over meekness. Though I will have to disavow some of her beliefs, the extreme actions she calls for are too much, even for my tastes. He is fucking pulling her leg. The fact that he would even indicate her as part of this is, he's just trying to fuck her over. And I think he really wants to fuck her over in her cause. And she's gotten a lot of flack because of her response to this, because instead of showing, compassion initially for those that had died, she immediately got defensive. And then, strangely enough, I had to rush to defend her, although I don't know if she knows that. But I found myself defending her because the reality is, Candace has been bullied a lot of her life. And it's become reflexive. She's a reactionary, reflexively so that she's always assertive and aggressively defensive. So if you jeopardize her security, her freedom, you attack her character, she's going to come at you like a ton of bricks. It's her fault. It's just where she is now. It's like you condition someone enough, that's where they're going to be, and that's where she is. And so I don't hold it against her, but it is something that she probably needs to work on during therapy, if she ever does go to therapy. But yeah, so this asshole is trying to fuck her over. And why is he trying to fuck her over? Because she's doing a real service. Maybe she's a neocon. She's definitely conservative, or at least working with the conservative side. But she's trying to do some real good, and she's having some very good conversations. And she's trying to disarm or neutralize the effects of identitarianism within the Black community. She has something called Blexit, where she basically insists that you're free. You don't need to live on the not reservation. What is it called? The I forgot what it was, but basically she's saying that you don't need to be slaves anymore, right? You can go out now, do your own thing. Um, and that's where she is. So she has this victor mentality, and she encourages others to think for themselves, think critically, and stop voting for the Democratic Party because she believes that they have abandoned minorities every time they try to string them along. A carrot on the stick saying, we'll take care of you. And the reality is that they don't do jack shit. So I understand where she's coming from because actually, truth, both the right and the left do this. But that's what she's trying to do. And I think that there's some good from this because, again, she's challenging this identitarianism. So good for her. But this asshole is trying to ruin all that. And so naturally, she's going to be reactionary to it. But like I said, he doesn't actually believe what he's saying. I don't think that even he put this together on his own because some of this is very incoherent. But there definitely seems to be some inspiration from the left, like I said. There's obviously some clear inspiration from the right. Obviously, he's listened to people like Richard Spencer. But he's also indicated some other factions as well who are actually doing some real good in the world. I'm not going to mention their names because I'm not trying to get them in trouble. But the reality is, these individuals are being indicated because he knows they're doing good. I think whoever wrote this knows that these people are doing real good, and they want to put a stop to it because they want to screw stuff up. They basically want this asshole to be the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. They want him to be what starts like something like a world war or a civil war, but on a very different scale and very different terms. Give me 1 second. I need to check something. Someone asked me a question on Twitter. They said, why would you feel bad for her? She's part of a group of people who prop up this outraged, offended, point the finger culture. Now that it happens to her, she must be coddled? No, liberals bring this shit on themselves. Let them eat each other with their own tactics. This is regarding Chelsea. Hold on, let me unplug this charging for just a second. I only have so many places I can plug shit in. God damn it. Alright. So 13% remaining. Awesome. Alright, so because she's trying to do some real good in the world. No one wholly good or evil. Commend the good, chastise the bad. Okay. Alright, now let's see. So I don't have to respond to anything else, but we'll see. Alright. Yeah, I had defended Chelsea Clinton. Isn't that weird? Chelsea Clinton was at a vigil for these 49 who died. And this bitch and her friends approached her and condemned her, saying that she's responsible for this with her hate speech. And the reality is, Chelsea Clinton hasn't spouted a hate speech. Instead, she's tried to diffuse situations and call people out when they're being extreme. She's actually been very diplomatic, more so than her mother, which I gotta credit. She's actually trying. So good for her. So, like I said to this person, commend the good and chastise the bad. I don't care what you think of her politics or whatever. When she's trying to do the right thing, recognize that, you know. Uh, Assholes. People saying things like your feelings toward her are what people like her use as weapons. She doesn't know these feelings. I'm sorry, but these assholes just don't get it. She's not a monster. I don't think that Chelsea Clinton is a monster. Her mother, on the other hand, might be, but I don't think Chelsea is. All right. Anyway, I feel bad. I do feel bad for her. Um, so if y'all don't follow Timcast, you need to. He's good. He's really good. He's sincere. He tries to cover stories as accurately as he can. When he's wrong, he admits that he's wrong. He's good people. Um, although I didn't even hear about the story, not from him. When I first heard about this story about the shooter, it wasn't from Timcast because I think he was asleep at the time. It was actually Count Dankula because he was still awake, or maybe he had just woken up because for him it was early in the morning. But yeah, Dankula was pissed off because he knew what was going to happen from this stupid manifesto. And you know the worst part about it is the asshole's alive. This dumbass shooter is still alive, which means unlike other shooters, we can't just forget about them. We can't just leave it and forget. Obviously, you don't forget about the victims, but you can forget about the shooter, and they don't have to remain present in your mind. You don't have to know their names. They don't have to be immortalized, right? But this asshole's still alive, and he can still inspire pieces of shit to become like him, which of course is his agenda. He absolutely wants to make more of himself. He wants to be white ISIS, and he wants to be their glorious leader. He somehow thinks that it doesn't matter what happens, as long as he wins in the end, as long as racists like him win in the end, it doesn't matter if he's painted as a villain now, because when they win, then they can rewrite the history books and paint them as whatever they want to be. That's the way he sees it. So he basically tells people don't be afraid to be villains. It's stupid. So let me read to you. I'm gonna read to you what I posted on Facebook. Just gonna show you real quick. I'm not sure I even read it to you because it's correct. I think it accurately describes the situation. So I said, a confluence of Western societies being on the brink of civil war and living unaccomplished, redundant lives invites the vain pursuits of sociopaths to participate as catalysts. It is also far easier to destroy than to create. The internet exacerbates this, and this is true. So, what I'm saying is that now, like before, during the civil rights era, right? We've been very close to civil war. We've had a lot of racial tensions. We've had racial tensions during the Jim Crow era, during all the way up until through the 1970s, right? Real problems. Black Panthers butting heads with white people, Ku Klux Klan butting heads with everybody else. We've had real racism, real tensions going on. And of course, what's his nuts? Charlie Manson wanted something called Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter was the race war, the war to end all wars, I think. I don't know enough about it, but I think that's basically what the point was. And He wanted to bring that about, I believe. And a lot of sociopaths want that. And I think it comes down to this, like I said, unaccomplished and redundant lives, which is to say, these people are unskilled, untalented. They have made no impact with their lives at all, certainly nothing positive. They're not going to be remembered in general. So, what do? Well, since they can't create because they lack the ability to do that, they lack the creativity or the drive or whatever it takes to be a positive, progressive, creative force. They completely lack that. So it's so much easier to destroy something than to create it. And if they destroy it, then they'll be remembered for destroying it. And so that's what they want to do. These assholes look at this as an opportunity to be remembered. And it's all in vain. Because the reality is, one, they're not going to be remembered the way they think they are. If anything, they're going to be footnotes. Their actions may be remembered, but their names certainly won't be. And things aren't going to result the way they think they're going to result. This guy thinks that the white people are going to come out on top. That's not the reality of this. The reality of this is we're going to find ourselves in more authoritarian, more austere situation. I think that we're going to see the internet turn into something very much like China's, which the EU and our own tech companies have been working toward that anyway. And of course, they have all great reasons why they should do that, but the reality is it's so much easier to control population this way too. So this asshole confessing everything about where he got all his information and how he plans to do all this shit, telling people to use memes. Yeah, he's basically encouraging them to create these vast, alienating, horrible restrictions for the internet. And that's really disgusting because I love freedom. I love the individual freedom to express yourself and say things ironically. Can't do that anymore because it's not funny, because it's insensitive, because someone might think that you're a terrorist now. It's ridiculous. So things like that. Obviously, he was hoping that the United States would themselves pass very strict gun regulations, or at least try to do so. And of course, those that are very strongly pro Second Amendment would fight them, and that would help send us to civil war. That this would help to balkanize us. I don't think it's gonna go down the way he thinks it's gonna go down. And why is this? Okay, 5%. Okay, you know what? I gotta cut this short. All right. If y'all are interested, just follow me on Twitter, and I'll see y'all later. Okay. Have a good night. Bye bye. Oh, by the way, self-made woman. Just self-made woman. Jadis Arjibi. Look me up. All right. See ya. Good night.